Can I move to calling upon Julie Pearn, please, to the mic? Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Good afternoon, councillors. Before I read my supplementary question, I would just like to pay brief tribute to Iyad Sholakte, 12 years old, who died today he's a resident of the New Asgar refugee camp, died today in Nablus as a result of gunshot wounds received at the hands of the IDF, the Israeli Occupation Force, along with 3 other young minor members of the camp. Died probably, it was hoped that he would survive, but died very likely because an ambulance that should have been able to take him for hospital care was prevented from reaching him in good time. This is a common experience. Nablus is under more or less daily and nightly invasion by Israeli troops. Sorry. My question to Tom Hunt: recalled examples of extreme violence recently carried out against minors in Nablus by IDF soldiers, as recounted by our visitor, Amjad Rifai, and asked if he would make a statement of solidarity with the people of Nablus that makes it clear that their suffering is at the hands of a belligerent and illegal Israeli occupation. Councillor Hunt's words in response avoided every aspect of my question. So I ask now, you said it was powerful to hear from Amjad about the difficulties of daily life for Palestinians in the West Bank. Why is it seemingly impossible for you to say that those difficulties are the result of the Israeli occupation? Are you forbidden to mention this by the government? Do you feel constrained by the Council's adoption of the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism? Do you feel it is a subject we can avoid when we talk about friendship and solidarity with Nablus? In the name of the people of this city, Tom, we need you to stand up. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Julie. Can I ask Councillor Tom Hunt, Chair of Strategy and Resources Policy Committee and Leader of the Sheffield City Council, to respond, please?
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Julie, let me just also say that the loss of innocent life that you've just described today is tragic, and I think all of us would send our thoughts to those families that are grieving today, like many are. Look, Israel's actions in Gaza and in the occupied West Bank are utterly intolerable, and we can't look away. Blocking aid, displacing people, expanding the war in Gaza, spreading illegal outposts and settlements throughout the West Bank is indefensible, and I don't have any problem saying that whatsoever. The difficulties of daily life that you've described in Nablus and for many Palestinians are clearly the result of those actions. I think all of us here want to see an end to that suffering. The Israeli government, let's be really clear, must stop its military operations, stop spreading illegal outposts, and immediately lift restrictions on humanitarian aid getting into Gaza. The Council has made it clear on very many occasions that we will continue to extend that hand of friendship, of solidarity and support to Nablus. And let me just take the opportunity again to thank the Sheffield Nablus Association for arranging the visit that many of us here were able to attend a few weeks ago with Amjad, and I'm pleased that he was able to return safely to Nablus. Thank you.
Thank you. I apologise if I say this surname wrongly. Lenni Sollinger. Thank you. If you can come to the mic. Thank you.
Yes, hello everybody. My name is Lenni Sollinger, and just listening to Tom Hunt just now saying how terrible what's going on is, well, we have to do something about it. And my supplementary question relates to it because it's about divestment, and it's about the fact that the council is just not taking a stand and hiding behind different things. So I want to just read my supplementary question.
Can I just ask you to pull the paper a bit in case it falls
To
out?
do what?
Just to pull the paper a bit
Fold the
inside,
paper.
a bit forward, because otherwise it might slip out. It's a bit out there. You're good. Go for it.
Is that okay? Right. I'm well aware that Sheffield Council does not control the South Yorkshire Pension Authority. Most of the 9 councils that were mentioned in the original question do not have control of their local pension fund. However, they have passed divestment motions and made statements urging the local authority pension funds to divest from arms companies and other corporations that are complicit in the genocide Israel is carrying out in Gaza and the occupation and apartheid of the West Bank. So they are able to do it. Those other 9 councils are able to do it, but this council doesn't feel it can. Francesca Albanese, the United Nations Special Rapporteur for the occupied Palestinian territories, has recently released her report From Economy of Occupation to Economy of Genocide. This identifies many complicit companies that are profiting from the genocide, which she describes as joint criminal enterprise. She makes it clear that financial institutions should not be investing in such companies. Well, South Yorkshire Pension Authority has investments in a number of these companies. Will you now do what many other councils have done and respond to the United Nations as well as to your own citizens and make a statement urging South Yorkshire Pension Authority to divest from complicit companies? Thank you.
Thank you, Lenni. Can I ask Councillor Tom Hunt, Chair of the Strategy and Resources Policy Committee and the Leader of the Council, to respond, please?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Lenni, thank you, and thank you to Sue for asking the original question. Thank you for coming and asking on Sue's behalf. Look, as I stated in my original answer, whilst we need to be clear that Sheffield City Council does not control the South Yorkshire Pensions Authority's investment decisions, I understand the concerns that you, that Sue and others are raising, and as I made clear in my original answer, I will consider making such a statement, and I'm happy to reiterate today my commitment to doing so. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Can I ask Annie O'Gara to come to the mic, please? Thank you.
Good afternoon and thank you. My original question pointed out the cost of Labour's expansion of arms manufacture, now embraced by Sheffield. The slashing of international aid, the attacks on welfare for those in need, and the suffering of those on the receiving end of weapons. The leader's answer addressed none of these points, sidestepping the question of Sheffield's complicity in genocide. United Nations Special Rapporteur Francesca Albanese has exposed, quote, the economy of genocide, end of quote. The rich profits that companies make by violating human rights and international law, as in Gaza. Her report indicts companies which manufacture F-35 components like BAE, enabling Israel to intensify oppression, repression and destruction. Barclays Bank is also named. These companies are welcomed in Sheffield. The leader hides behind the government, a government lambasted by over 300 Foreign Office staff, including Mark Smith, the most senior of them all, who said that ministers, quote, create a facade of legitimacy while allowing the most egregious crimes against humanity to take place. What I witnessed was not just moral failure, but conduct that I believe crossed the threshold into complicity with war crimes. What does the Council say to these searing criticisms on the government on whom it relies for its policy on arms manufacture expansion? And is the Council still absolutely sure that it's not dragging Sheffield into the economy of genocide?
Thank you, Annie. Thank you for your question. Can I ask Councillor Tom Hunt to respond, please?
Annie, thank you for your question. Let me reiterate what I just said to Julie. Israel's actions in Gaza and in the occupied West Bank are utterly intolerable, and I don't feel that any of us can look away. To be really clear, blocking aid, people being shot whilst they're trying to get aid, displacement of people, the sorts of tragedies we heard from Julie earlier on, expanding the war in Gaza, spreading illegal outposts. These are actions that I'm not going to defend. They are indefensible. The difficulties of daily life that many Palestinians are experiencing are a direct result of those actions. And to be really clear, I have no problem whatsoever saying that. I don't believe the suggestion that Sheffield has implicated itself in complicity in genocide is either fair or justified. As for the government's actions, I do welcome the government's decision to pause free trade agreements with Israel, effective immediately. I welcome the government's action to sanction 2 far-right ministers for their repeated and disgraceful incitements of violence against Palestinian communities in the occupied West Bank. I welcome new sanctions that target 3 individuals, 2 illegal setter outposts and 2 organisations that have supported violence against Palestinian communities in the West Bank. And I welcome the government's decision to restore funding to UNRWA. These are the actions of a government that is working through and with the international community for a 2-state solution and is committed for peace. So thank you.
You still allow this council to be ruled by a government decision, a government that's been exposed by people in the highest offices in the Foreign Office, and that's shameful.
Thank you. Yeah. Councillor Diamond.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Question 1. Thank you for your response, Councillor Hunt. But firstly, I find it inconceivable that you are still denying that Israel's genocide of Palestinians, despite the consensus of all credible human rights organisations, genocide scholars, and the undeniable evidence that Israel is still carrying out a textbook genocide by killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole and in part, and imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group. You say that Israel's actions are intolerable and indefensible, but according to research, Labour has sold more arms to Israel since coming to power.
Is there a question?
There is, yes.
Sorry, I apologise.
Since coming to power than the Tories did in the preceding 3 years. It is still refuelling Israeli jets, still exploiting F-35 parts.
I need a question,
reconnaissance
Alex.
flights.
I need a question.
Okay. So why then do you and your colleagues continue to take no action as the Labour Party, of which you are all representatives, continues to materially support the IDF as it carries out the undeniable genocide of the Palestinian people?
Councillor Hunt.
I mean, it's just not correct at all in what he said there. I reiterated earlier on some of the actions that the government is taking, pausing, no longer pursuing the free trade agreement negotiations with Israel effective immediately, sanctioning far-right ministers for their repeated incitements of violence against Palestinian communities in the West Bank, restoring funding to UNRWA, working through the international community to do all that is possible for a negotiated peace. And so I do just have to reject in the strongest possible terms the charges that you're making here. It doesn't stack up.
Thank you. Page 5?
I mean, question 2.
Page 5? Sorry, Alexei. Page
I've still
4?
got another question.
Second question. Okay.
Second question.
Right.
I mean, if you think I've made any inaccurate statements, I would like you to point out where that's inaccurate, because they are still doing it. But the Council makes many symbolic declarations routinely in almost every motion passed and in public statements. And of course, declaring an apartheid zone would have a practical effect. It would send a clear message to the media and the world that we are an anti-racist city that opposes apartheid and genocide. Is the real reason that you won't support this because your party leadership is materially supporting genocide and apartheid because it is institutionally racist against Palestinians and you don't want to lose your job?
Would you like to respond to that question, please?
I mean, I can do. Look, we've had lots of conversations. He and his party know full well that a declaration of the kind that he's talking about has been, would have no practical effect. But the councillors in this chamber, people in this city, have continued to rightly raise their voice to oppose racism and to call for peace. And I know that everyone here stands with them. So he's a long-standing campaigner for Palestinian justice. And I thank him and all the people who are regularly raising their voices on this issue, sending a very clear message. And through the Sheffield Nablus Twinning Association, we've been able to strike up that friendship with Nablus, which I welcome, and I look forward to continuing to extending that hand of friendship as we move forward.
Thank you, and I apologise to Councillor Diamond to rush you out. Page 4. Councillor, yeah. Councillor, yeah, Gilbert first. Yeah, Councillor Gilbert.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Supplementary to my question 3. You say the government has been clear that international humanitarian law should always be upheld. My supplementary question is international humanitarian law being upheld?
If it isn't, as I've said in my answer to question 2, any breaches of international humanitarian law should always be investigated. They should always be investigated swiftly to ensure that there is full investigation and that justice is served. As you know, there is a case with the International Court of Justice right now, and the International Criminal Court are looking at investigations here. So, of course, international law should always be upheld.
Thank you. Councillor Millinson.
Thank you for your answer, Councillor Hunt. It's a very generalised response about where you say you're condemning Israel's actions in Gaza and the West Bank. My question was about Nablus. Why has there been no specific message of support for our friends in Nablus in the wake of recent events there?
Well, I think all of us who were there in that meeting, as you were, with Amjad around the conference room table just a few weeks ago, expressed our very clear support for the work that he and colleagues are doing at the New Asker camp, and also this city's support for the friendship agreement that we're proud to have signed. So I do think that there has been regular conversation, and we will continue to deepen that relationship, and events of the kind that were reported earlier on from a member in the public gallery are tragic, and all of us, I'm sure, will extend our condolences for people who've lost friends, family and neighbours. And so look, the relationship that we've struck up, and I thank you and the people in the Sheffield Nablus Twinning Association, is a meaningful one, and we'll have further conversations and we'll continue to express our support and solidarity and an end to the suffering that they and many people throughout Palestine and the West Bank occupied territories are experiencing right now.
Thank you. Page 4. Page 5. Go ahead, Councillor Milson.
Thank you. Yeah, there's been, just in response to that previous answer, there has not been a public statement, which is what we're looking for. So that could be considered, that would be great. Please could you respond to that. Question 5 of my questions. I agree with your earlier answers that we should all consider, quote, all consider how we can act to tackle racism through our words and actions. However, will you now publicly call out the Israeli genocide? Will you now encourage wider divestment from Israel by all private and public organisations in Sheffield?
I've already earlier on said to give consideration to a statement of the kind that you're talking about, and on the question of genocide, my answers have been clear that I think it's the ICJ that's best placed to continue its investigation on that. others, many respected international human rights organisations have concluded that a genocide is taking place, and that is exactly their right to be able to make that decision. But there is an international process taking place to determine the case that South Africa has brought against Israel, and there's an interim ruling that's been made already, and that I think we need to see that that process is allowed to proceed. But I absolutely note the concerns that you and others are raising, really do. We all want to make sure that there is an end to the suffering that people see on a daily basis.
My question wasn't answered. My question was, will he now encourage wider divestment from Israel by all private and public organisations in Sheffield?
Can you clarify, or shall we note it?
I think we can kind of carry on in this vein if you want, Councillor Madison. I'm happy to have a conversation with you afterwards, but my answer to the earlier question from a member of the public about divestment is where we can carry on the conversation around.
Thank you. Page 5 still. Councillor Al-Ahda.
Thank you. You are happy to raise the Israeli flag above our town hall for what you called an act of terror, despite the ICJ never calling it that. Do you also call what Israel is doing in Gaza acts of terror? Not just intolerable, but acts of terror. Thank you.
I'm happy to say that Israel's actions are intolerable and indefensible, and as I set out earlier on, we all need to be raising our voices on this and can't look away from the suffering that's taking place right now. So I'm not sure, what more you want on that particular point, but we have all, as public representatives, got a duty to continue to raise our voice on this.
Thank you. Councillor Al-Ahda.
Thank you. Should the Labour government end all military support for Israel when it commits war crimes? Yes or no? Thank you.
I'm sure that's a supplementary question. If there's war crimes are being committed, then of course they have to be investigated, and that is taking place right now. So if there are, again, if you want to have further conversations about this, in case I'm not understanding your question, but yeah.
Can I elaborate, or since he doesn't understand my question?
I can only allow one per question. So if you want to have a conversation, Councillor Tom Hunt did ask.
All right, thank you.
Did offer.